There's a lot of questions flying around about Arsenal at the moment, and we're going to try and tackle all of them as I'm joined by a very special guest. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Let's Talk Arsenal show on the channel, the show in which I'm joined by a variety of weird and wonderful guests to talk about our beloved club. And this week, it's not so weird and wonderful. It's more just excellent, dedicated content of quite high quality and certainly fantastic work and analytics going into things as well. From the different knock, it's Alex. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Very well, sir. Thank you so much for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. It kind of stemmed from where everybody meets online these days, which is by arguing. It's good to have you on the show and have a discussion. I have to say that our mutual friend Clive from the Arsenal Vision podcast, he saw our debate and obviously got a little bit involved in it as well. And he texted me saying, "You've got to get this guy on the show, mate. He's brilliant." So you've got a lot of plaudits from Clive coming in, who the chat books will know at this point. He basically dictates this entire show at this stage. So
he is what the kids say, the GOAT of Arsenal content. Yeah, I will say it was one of the best arguments I've ever had on the internet. So yeah, I think we can both pat ourselves on the back.
We basically wrote dissertations back to one another. I think it's probably the best way to sum things up. Just for the benefit of the listeners who may not be aware of who you are. To be fair, I should say that you are one of the most highly requested guests I've had for the show. There's a lot of fans of yours in the chat box. But for those that aren't aware of your channel, just give yourself a little bit of background about what it is that you're creating.
Yeah, so Different Knock comes from a very niche Raul Sanllehi quote, which do you remember that? In that video he did about, I think it was about Ramsey, when Arsenal looks at other players, something like that. Yeah. And that we were making a podcast at the time. We thought that's quite good, and it's he's gone, and it's kind of stuck. So just sort of video essays on Arsenal, really. Just anything that sort of comes to mind. Trying to just sort of put my ideas out there, and it's gone really well, and people are really generally really nice, so it's great.
Yeah, no, I like yourself and Babs I look at as kind of two fantastic content creators in terms of the edited content that's out there, that's really engaging, short snappy content that's also educational in its same way. So yeah, I was in prep for, I'd seen some of your shows before, but obviously in prep of this show I was watching back on some of the episodes that you've done recently, and just like the production quality is excellent, and
appreciate that, man.
As any podcaster or show creator can appreciate, it's audio quality, editing is always the geeky things we geek over. So I certainly appreciate that. But yes, our debate spawned from one of the question marks surrounding Arsenal and Mikel Arteta at the moment, which is obviously on the youth side of things and the opportunities being given to youth players right now. And I think that's one of a number of things that I'd hope to tackle in today's show. But we should probably start with the headline act, which is how our interaction came to be. And it's for me a really interesting topic because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around it. But I think there is some genuine criticisms to be had towards the club. So where do you kind of sit right now with Arteta in particular, and perhaps the viewpoint that he doesn't give youth a chance, being the often accusation he's sent toward?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to properly chat it over, because I think what happens online is, it's like, there's, whatever you think of the guy, I think this is a brilliant way of putting it. Ricky Gervais has this whole thing about online. It can feel like you go out into sort of a village square, and you pick up something that says guitar lessons, and you go, I don't want guitar lessons.
Yeah,
and it's this brilliant sort of definition of online conversation, and things obviously get reduced and context removed, all sort of stuff. So it's great to just chat through this. So yeah, Arteta doesn't give youth a chance is a fascinating one to break down. So I want to preface all of this with, if a manager is winning games, that is all that matters. Genuinely, everything else is secondary, tertiary, whatever the fourth one is. I'm not clever enough.
Quaternary, I think.
There you go. I learned a new word.
Former geography teacher here, always comes to the fore.
Yeah, quaternary. That is great. So anyway, as I said, quaternary. It's always something lower than winning matches. That is the most important thing. So I never want in these sorts of conversations to think that I think this is the most important thing at the club. But we're nerds, right? We care about these tiny little things. Oh, have we got the right commercial deal with Adidas? Have we, whatever? These are the things we sort of argue about, whatever. So important context. I think when he gives, whether giving youth a chance or not is the question, is a hard one, because it also depends on how much you care. Really, I think each person will have a different relative conversation with that, and essentially be like, okay, well, I think he does give youth a chance, and it's enough for me. Some people want him to give loads more. Some people want to give they're not bothered at all as long as we win. Whatever, there'll be people, parents of young players will be going, oh my God, this guy is not giving my son a chance. And, someone, a Chelsea fan is probably thinking, I don't, it's everyone's got a different opinion. It doesn't, it's all relevant. So here's my position. I think Arteta, relative to other managers, is not as skilled or has not given enough for me of a chance to young players over his 4 years in charge. I want to put some numbers to that, just to give that some context. So David Moyes was appointed, I could be wrong, but was it 7 days before or after Arteta? So anyway, similarly around that time. From his appointment to, I think it was last November, so 2023, there was an Athletic article. He's given 16 academy debuts. Pep Guardiola, up into and including from his arrival to, I think it was November 2022, so we're going back a while, had given 24 academy debuts. Jurgen Klopp, I don't know the numbers, but similar around there. And obviously, we're looking at the moment, we're looking at the likes of Conor Bradley, we're looking at the likes of Chetic last season, and so on and so forth. We can name some players. I think the question of Arteta's youth acumen has to be separated out from his development, because this guy's a clearly really skilled developer of talent. Like, we've seen that, right? Like, there's no denying that. Like Saka, Martinelli, even look at the likes of, how Smith Rowe's come on. I appreciate, maybe we can come to him at some point, but, there's been some questions around him. This is a clearly a brilliant developer of talent, right? But for me, 6 debuts in that 4-year period is not enough. Some people might say it is. They might say, I don't care. But for me, it's not enough. And those players are 7. Sorry, apologies. I believe they are. We should probably name them: Ben Cottrell, Miguel Aziz, Charlie Patino, Ethan Waneri,
Charles Sago Jr.
Charles Sago Jr. Good shout. That's 5.
We're testing each other. I wrote these down. I should know them.
Yeah, someone in the chat will maybe be able to say it.
Carl Hein is the other.
Carl Hein. That's a great shout. I'm sure we've got
there's one more as well that slipped my mind, but we'll come back to it. Yeah,
I think there's one more. So for me, that's not Balogun. Bang on. I think then when you look into the specifics of some of those, for example, Balogun, I think we spoke about in our interaction. I would argue that the Balogun situation was more pressed upon him. I remembered the press conference. It was before PSV. We can go back and watch that press conference. He essentially said the Waneri thing, he didn't exactly say this, but it was to show him there's a pathway. Again, he's done it, so I can't take that credit away from him. But clearly there was a decision with Ethan to say, look, we want to show this guy there's a pathway. He's going to leave unless we give him we can't know that, but I think we can guess that, so we can begin to go, okay, how many of these were like absolute choices and whatever. I think we can then begin to look at opportunities and say, the PSV game this season, the dead rubber. I think we can look at the end of last season when it wouldn't matter what the result was against Wolves. We would have come second. And Mario Kozadubry's on the bench and Saka plays, I think it's 83 minutes. I was at that game going, come on, give this guy a chance. He's had the opportunities. And then, so for me, I think when you look at the numbers, it's not enough. And I'll end with this. It's not the end of the world. It's okay for him to be bad at something. And I think if you're going to choose something for a manager to be bad at, it is this. And that's fine. But I think you can save yourself a lot of stress by good use of the academy. And I think at the moment, that's not what I see from Arteta. But sorry, I've spoken for ages, so I'll let you go.
No, that's fine. I think it provides some great context. For me, I set out when I wrote the article in the first place, because one thing I love doing is I love proving absolutes wrong. Like, just things like Arteta is terrible at giving youth a chance, or Arteta can't give youth a chance, or Zinchenko can't defend, or Arteta's spent 700 million since he took over. I love going through the details of proving why these absolutes are incorrect. But what I think that we'll probably align on some part of the spectrum is that Arteta, whilst I think does give youth a chance, he can be a lot better at giving youth a chance. And I think that's probably along the line of where we're both going to end up sitting.
I think so.
I think there are games which he is accused of, like the PSV game, which I don't actually look at as something as a problem. But the Wolves game you referenced and the RC Lens game this season at home as another opportunity as well, I think are genuine, where you can finger point at those games and say, yeah, come on, Mikel. Like you could have thrown the kid on.
Yeah.
The PSV game I disagree about because at 1-1 in a game that, yes, on paper is a dead rubber, but for everyone that watched that game, both sides wanted to win it. Both sides were intense in that game. PSV in particular trying to go for the winner. There was a financial reward, of course, on offer in the Champions League, which dwarfs that of the Europa League or the Conference League group stages. And Arteta said after the game that he didn't feel it was the right context to throw Noineri or I think it was potentially Waters that was the other, and Sousa as well that were on the bench. So, and I agree with him in that game. I think actually the intensity of that game, the scoreline of where it was, even though it was a dead rubber and their only reward was financial, I do kind of see where he was coming from with that. The Lens game, when you're 5-0 up at halftime or whatever it was, I think in that game, you can argue he should have given the kids more of an opportunity to bring them on, especially when you bring on somebody senior with 5 minutes to go. The Wolves game, you're absolutely right. One I haven't even thought about, to be fair. In the last game of the season, Amaro Kojadubri, give him a chance. Throw him on for the last 10 minutes, this last game of the season. Why not? So the fact that when we talk about the opportunities he's given, we've named the 7 debutants that he's given. He started Charles Sago Jr. in the League Cup game against Brentford. The pressure that is on Arteta to deliver a trophy at the moment. There's an irony, I think, that emerges because we want him to give youth a chance. We very nearly went out against Brentford if it wasn't, we held on to that 1-0. They battered us in the second half and could have very easily scored and should have scored from a number of the opportunities they had. And Arteta technically risked that opening tie by playing Charles Sago Jr. over maybe one of the more senior players that was on the bench, like an Odegaard, like a Jesus on that day that was on the bench. And so I think that was an example of where he has given youth a chance at the risk of what is going to happen in that game. I think that the use of Guardiola is an example, and I think this is where Clive would certainly start raising his head up in this debate, as he did on social media, is that if you look at the Man City investment into their academy, for starters, like this is a club that nabs Manchester United's youth players, and not at the age of 8 or 10 like we did with Nketiah from Chelsea, at the age of, in their teens, that they nick those Manchester United academy graduates or about to be academy graduates. And there's also another argument, which I'll probably end this equally long monologue with, of the question of, is there an argument that actually those other clubs that are giving debuts, the players they're giving debuts to, are actually just better than our kids, and that's why they're getting a chance in relation to the starting 11 that they're going up against?
I've got after this conversation, I wanted to write a video about this because I wanted to hear your perspective, and then I'm going to try and put it all into a video and sort of weigh it up. And I've got this analogy of whack-a-mole.
50% cut on the ad revenue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. If it does well, you get a shout. But yeah, do you know the game whack-a-mole, where you have to like hit certain things down, right?
Yeah. Go play fair game in Canary Wharf. You can go play it there. It's very good.
Great stuff. So I think the youth thing is a little bit like that. It's like, okay, even if so let's say the conclusion of this is actually Arsenal's youth players, and I can see a couple of people commenting as well, maybe the talent isn't good enough. Well, then I'd argue we have another problem. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that's fair. And let's say that we could objectively say somehow that Arsenal's youth talent weren't as good as City or United or whoever it was. We've got a different issue, haven't we? We've got another problem. I think for me, the upside of youth players, when you look at the likes of Rico Lewis, you look at the likes of, Garnacho coming in, you look at the likes of, the situations, there's never a perfect scenario where a youth player is going to be absolutely perfect. It's going to come in and it's the perfect scenario. We've seen them with the, whether the Lens game and we're 5-0 up at time, or the dead rubber and the PSV, whatever you think of that. I've found the situation with Ben White there, because if he is carrying a knock, then why is he playing that slightly confused me if Roy Waters is
Mm-hmm.
on the bench anyway. But we're also dealing with scraps of information. We're dealing with, I don't speak to Mikel Arteta regularly, at all. So I don't know, but I'm seeing from the outside. But I suppose two things. Firstly, is the idea that we may have another problem, but secondly, the upside of a youth player coming in and doing well can mean you don't have to go into the market. And so how much does Rico Lewis cost on the market now? How much does Garnacho cost on the market now? You can, especially when we're sat here with the PSR issues that we have, say we'd given, okay, I'm not saying they're good enough. I don't know. Say we'd given a Keon Edwards a chance 18 months ago. Say we'd given John Jules a chance when Mikel comes in. Who knows what situation we're in? Had we not given Smith Rowe a chance on the 26th of December 2020, we might be on a completely different path. We might be
Which was Arteta's choice to do.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And I'm saying that's one of the benefits. That I just think there's such a massive upside. And I also something actually Clive has said as well, which I would say I agree with about 99.99999% of what Clive says. But what he does say is you don't want to 10 minutes at the wrong time for a player can kill them. And I 100% understand that. And on an individual level, obviously you don't want to put someone in a position where they're going to be, a young person's career is destroyed because they go out and their confidence go. You don't want that. And I would trust the people who know them to make that decision. But my suggestion would be, if that happens, one of two things has happened. The player isn't right for the environment, which is fine, but then they need to go somewhere else, or the academy hasn't prepared them for that situation. Both of them, which I would say are not necessarily about the player. Well, no, one of them is about the player, one of them is about the academy, but the other one is, okay, well then, were they ever going to, if 10 minutes and giving a couple of balls away in a dead rubber game in the Champions League destroys the player mentally, I have sympathy for them on an individual level, and that person should be looked after. But were they right for top level football? I don't know.
I think I've got a good response for that. How many Arsenal fans do you think watch under 21 or youth games?
Okay, how many Arsenal fans say they watch?
Let's ask a better question. What percentage of fans that watch the senior men's team do you think genuinely watch the under 21s on a regular basis?
I would put it below 5%.
So would I. I think it's probably even lower than that.
A very small percentage.
If there's hundreds of millions of Arsenal fans watching us play, which there could be, it's maybe more in the tens of millions, but it could be in the hundreds of millions. China might be full of Arsenal fans. We don't know, but probably not actually thinking about it. But in regards to the percentage of watching those youth games, and then obviously the presence of Arsenal fans online, I don't think that the academy can prepare a player for a 10-minute performance in front of suddenly tens of millions of people that is going to brand them in the memory of those fans with just those 10 minutes, because we'll hear about them on podcasts, or we'll hear about them or see them a little bit in pre-season, as we have with Raw Waters, for example. But until they step onto the stage and play a proper game in a competitive environment, those fans, those 10 minutes, those 15 minutes is what they are going to take as the example. And when I think about Charlie Patino's performance against Nottingham Forest, there was a lot of concerns with the entire team, for sure, not just Patino. But that was the last reference point we had of Patino as a potential starter in a senior game for us. And it didn't land in that moment. He's gone to Blackpool. It was a decent season. There was question marks about some of his loan at Blackpool, which aren't really talked about, because we like to talk about the positives when it comes to the youth players more than the negatives. It swaps completely when you get to senior level. Of course, this season at Swansea's gone pretty, I think, better than last season did at Blackpool as well. And there'll be a lot of clamour for him to probably stay in the summer, despite him having a year on his contract. So do you see what I mean about the argument about the preparation? I think I cut the academy some slack in that regard, because I just think the difference off the pitch in terms of perception is just something that you can't prepare for in the same way.
I would agree. I don't think it's possible to prepare, but at some point you have to take that leap. And
Absolutely.
I think it's not possible to give someone in the same way that in all walks of life. If you go to a job interview, or even coming on here, I didn't know what questions you're going to ask. You don't know what I'm going to say. It's
Yeah,
you're always
I
in
like
a
live
bit.
shows. It's great.
Yeah, it's
Chaos.
great, isn't it? And it kind of so it can go somewhere you don't expect, which is exciting.
Yeah.
I do think though there are certain things you can do. Sounds like Pez Mertesacker is doing a great job with the sort of the strong young gunners stuff, to protect players at least. Maybe not prepare them, but protect them for the moment they go on the pitch and all of that stuff. And let's be honest. Is there an Arsenal fan out there who doesn't know who Miles Lewis-Skelly is? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's the 80s where a young player comes up who's, oh my goodness me, you don't know. Yes, okay, maybe people don't watch U21 football, but I would be shocked if people didn't know who. At least there was a guy who's 15 who scored 11 goals against Liverpool. I think most fans would know that. So certainly online fans who are going to be the most vocal anyway. So I don't think there is a possibility to prepare. But equally, I think there are to actually make that leap. But I also think there are certain things you can do, and I would suggest the players who maybe make that leap, whether it goes well or not, and are okay, have been prepared well, and you can suggest that maybe they're ready for first team football. I don't know about you. I don't know how old you are, but I think back to myself at like 16, and I'm like, I would have absolutely crumbled. For someone says one negative thing, I'd have crumbled.
Yeah,
but I'm not. Then I'm not built for that level, and I'm not.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? So it's kind of fine.
Yeah, it's in human nature, isn't it, to always look at the negatives. I do it now at 29, by the way. So I still look at those negatives, and it's tough. I've certainly grown a thicker skin, and that experience of doing this show since 2016 has certainly taught me that ability to bat insults away or to just ignore some elements of the fan base as well, which is certainly a skill that's worth doing, is ignoring people. I do think that we agree along the lines of that Arteta can be better, but he's not. I was going to say he's not failing. Do you think he's failing with it? I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'd rather ask you the question.
I don't think you can say he's failing. I think if you look at the job he's doing at Arsenal, it's so.
I meant more with the just specifically.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't use those words. But if I was going in and saying, what can we do better at Arsenal? As well as looking at how we prepare for open play stuff. Looking at perhaps our game management and certain things. I remember Mikel went on this sort of long thing at the end of last season, sort of said there's a number of things that we can do better, man-to-man situations or whatever he said. I'd just add youth integration onto the bottom of that. And again, which is, as I said at the top, I don't want this to come across in any way like I'm like, this is the big problem at Arsenal. It's not. It's. But what I do think is I see massive upsides to youth integration, and also think that if we can't integrate youth at the same level that Man City, Liverpool, West Ham, Chelsea, so and so on do, fine. But then there's something else going on there. It might be that Mikel is like, I don't have the talented player. That's absolutely fine. Then we've got a different issue. Then we need to look at Per Mertesacker. We need to look at the recruitment. We need to look at, because these guys, Bukayo Saka, what does he go for now? 150 million? To the right buyer.
I don't think you can put a price on it.
So, this is the thing. Youth football, you're not only competing with the guys next to you in the changing room, you're also competing with the youth academies everywhere. You're competing with youth academies all across the Premier League, but also all across the world. These clubs have data points on it, or probably, that we wouldn't even believe on young players. So the pressure has never been higher, and that's fine. But the reason the pressure's never been higher, and the reason the stakes have never been higher, is because the upside is so huge. That's the point. You can save yourself. Stan Kroenke, why would he say to Mikel, here's 120 million pounds for Victor Osimhen, when he thinks actually there might be someone in the academy? And whether there is or isn't is kind of up to you to decide. But the point is, we should be aiming at least to get to that point if we're not.
Yeah, I think what would make this debate in terms of like it would really lean in your favour is if there wasn't obviously an already existing roster of quite a few Hale graduates in the senior team. If there wasn't a Saka, a Smith Rowe, and Nketiah that is used relatively often by Arteta, and Nelson that's also there in the background too. I think then there would be a really strong argument for the idea that he should be doing a lot more. But because those players exist, and yes, he inherited those players who'd already made their senior debuts for sure. But obviously he established Saka, he established Smith Rowe to an extent, and even Nketiah as the number 2 striker to a degree at the club as well. Whether people think that's the right decision or not, he obviously did that. So I think that there is a lot more to come from the academy. And I think also, we talk about and we hype up Nwaneri and Skelly. At the end of the day, these kids are 16, 17 years of age, as well. And, I was talking to somebody the other day about Nwaneri and Miles Lewis Skelly, and they were complaining to me. They're like, these guys are good enough for senior football, maybe not for Arsenal, but they should be going on loan. And I had to explain that they can't, that they can't go on loan yet because they haven't signed a professional contract. Those pro contracts signed when they're 17. And I think that's the misconception that a lot of people sometimes have, is that, well, if they're not playing, why are they not playing elsewhere if they're good enough? And I'm like, well, they probably are good enough to go on loan.
Get them to Sturm Graz. Come on. Vitus Arnhem.
The Mika Viref route. Let's do that.
I will say that on that, just very briefly, I think our usage of loans can have a look as well. We can have a look at, are we, loans are really difficult. And, I would challenge you to find any club in the world who masters loaning.
Chelsea, maybe.
But even just because they do it so much, eventually you throw enough at the wall, something's going to stick. But that's another area that I look at. Where does when we look back in, let's say, last 5 years of loans, the likes of I don't know, John Jules and Aziz and these types of players. And again, it's difficult because you don't know whether they're good enough or not. But I do think you can always strive to be better. And obviously, I think was it Ben Napper went to Norwich?
Yeah, we've now got it's surname begins with H. What's his name? I'll have to Google it quick. But I don't know if someone said Clive's name 3 times in the mirror, but he's appeared in the chat box and said, was watching Harry Clark and Steffi Mavididi play this week. I think the critique is using the loan world better to bring in funds. There you go.
Great minds.
The timing of that was absolutely perfect. Arsenal's loan manager is Sam Hable at the moment. He took over from Ben Napper, yes. So, yeah, you're right. I think loan-wise, you look at Tavares, for instance, who's gone to Forest, not played. We've had it in the... It's like, I know there's probably assumptions saying that's been a bad loan. Like, I don't believe that they had discussions with Forest, and Forest were like, well,
we're not going to play him.
We're not going to play him, but we'll take him on loan.
Yeah.
I'm sure that conversation when he's going to get opportunities to play, and there wasn't really too much in the way of interest anyway in someone like Tavares.
I think with the loan thing, we can always be better. And I think 100% Arsenal can be better, but I would challenge you to find a club where you go, oh my God, look how there probably might be 1 or 2 loans in 2 or 3 years within 2 or 3 years that do really well or do okay or make you a bit of money. I think that's really hard. And it's also, what's that Jose Mourinho quote? How they play, if they play. You look at the loan market that we did, let's say in the last 10 years. Where are those players now? If they were good enough, they would have found their way. So it's hard. That's hard.
Saying, get Jeff Rain Adelaide in the squad, and look what's happened. It's Steffi Mavididi, I think that Clive mentioned, he was at Charlton. I remember my missus, that side of the family are Charlton fans. So I remember them raving about him. And then I think he went to Montpellier for a bit. Now he's back with Leicester, of course. And, that some of them aren't going to develop into a player that's of a competitive level until they're just never going to get a chance. Like Balogun, I think, was one of those. He could become a striker that Arsenal might be interested in again in 3 or 4 years' time, but that was never going to happen whilst I thought he was at Arsenal. He's gone away, scored less goals this season at Monaco than Nketiah's got for Arsenal this season, playing a lot less football. So it's always worth pointing out sometimes that it could be the time that they're at Arsenal is just not the right time for them at Arsenal. And that is the reality that we have to find ourselves with. Just before we go on to the next topic, a few super chats. Diallo says, always enjoy listening to these two gentlemen. Thank you, Diallo. Jack Senior says, 2 of the very best Arsenal content creators here. Thank you, Jack. And Adam said, my 2 favourites finally teaming up. Sad I have to now go back to the start and listen from the beginning. You can catch up, of course, if you are tuning in late. This will also be out on an audio version platform a little bit later on this evening as well, if you'd like to listen on those. I think that quite nicely, we talk about loans. That leans probably into one of the other criticisms of the club right now, which is selling. And how we sell as a club. Edu, I think in the summer is going to be under massive scrutiny regarding a number of players that we expect probably won't be here. I'm talking about the likes of Aaron Ramsdale, potentially Eddie Nketiah, potentially Reece Nelson. Smith Rowe could come into this as well. I've got this sneaking suspicion that Zinchenko could soon be on the potential outgoings list in the near future. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Thomas Partey could be on the way out. And Edu has got to manage those sales with his team, of course, and try and get money in so that Arsenal can have far greater freedom to deal with these scrutinizing profit and sustainability regulations. So where do you sit with Arsenal selling? Are you sympathetic to the challenges that we faced in selling, or should we be doing a lot better?
Yeah, it's tough. It's similar. I almost describe it as similar to the David Raya situation. When you're trying to move up, it creates separate problems. So in the Raya situation, we're trying to move up, but if you're in second and you're trying to go to first, it's much harder to go from second to first than it is. Well, there's less space to move, so the improvements are going to be this big. So I think that's some of the Raya situation. I think that's similar with the selling, because we've been trying to move up the table, because we've gone through, what is it, eighth, fifth, second. What we're getting rid of, or not, what we're sort of not interested in having the team anymore, will be a asset that we're losing, something that we clearly don't want. And it's very hard to sell assets, especially outside of the Premier League, considering, the fees that are involved in the Premier League and the money that's available abroad, to when they know you don't want them. Who's going to pay loads and loads of money for Cedric Suarez, who's come out of the team, or for Sambi Lukonga, who's come out of the team, whatever, when you know that club don't want them? The biggest sales, it's a bit of an obvious point, but I do think it's worth saying, when people say, oh, Arsenal don't sell very well. Well, who are the biggest sales? Did Aston Villa want to sell Jack Grealish to Villa? To Man City? Not really. Did Liverpool really, yes, they got an amazing deal. That's an amazing sale. Yeah. We look back at it. But at the time, did they want to sell him to Barcelona? Probably not. Until the price was right. So that's always a key thing to remember. I think we can be better. I do think now we've slightly established ourselves, and the squad is sort of strengthening itself. I look at the likes of a couple of players you mentioned, Zinchenko. I look at Ramsdale, but there was green shoots last summer, and also, Willock was a decent sale. Balogun was a decent sale. And I think we'll probably see another record sale this summer. I think we'll probably see it with Ramsdale, or with Zinchenko, maybe. I don't know, depending on how Timber comes in at the end of the season and how that situation pans out. I don't know. Look, are we the best sellers? No. But equally, have we been in a position of strength with assets that we want to hold on to, that someone can prize it away from us? That's when you get money. So it's hard. And I think, maybe Nketiah goes. I don't know. Maybe, we were looking at, in January, there was some rumors about Tomiyasu going. And I wouldn't sell Tomiyasu. But if you're offering me £70 million, that's when you start to get the sense of a good selling club, when you don't want to sell a player, but you have enough really going on to be able to say, okay, maybe we do that and then we move something on. So we've not been in a position for very long where we have loads of saleable assets. So until we are 2-3 years down the line, I probably won't be too harsh on that, even though I think we've not been amazing.
Yeah, I think that, there's definitely reference points that I look at, and I said this on a show the other day. So for the listeners that have heard that, sorry, just because I'm going to repeat it, but, Bernd Leno's sale was, in my opinion, a pathetic sale.
Yeah, it's a poor sale.
Like £3 million rising to about 8 is based upon his, if they stayed up, and then subsequent, I think, survivals and things like that, and the amount of appearance and stuff. I think we probably will get close to the 8 million, but even then, this is a German international that was, I think, just before, maybe slightly after the age of 30. He's got loads of years at the senior level ahead of him. Was playing regular football, I think, a season prior at Arsenal. Manfred Panos, the money we got for him was very low. Guendouzi, I understand to a degree, but had obviously been playing regularly, and we'd already pre-agreed that price tag prior to his loan to Marseille, which I think factors into things. But yeah, there's been some sales which I look at and go, but then there's others. I think, we did well to get 25 million for Joe Willock. I know people regret the loss of Emi Martinez, but after just 12 games, we got close to £20 million for a guy who had just played 12 games in the first team. And obviously we've replaced him, and people would say there's a debate about whether or not Raya or Ramsdale is as good as Martinez, but I suppose that's a different podcast. sales like Balogun, who we've already mentioned, £34 million for him, which could rise to over 40 depending on what he's sold on for with the sell-on clause of 17.5%, is also worth considering. What we've done well to get. Before Edu, you had the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, Iwobi getting in close to £40 million as sales as well. So yeah, I think that, and also, do you think there's an argument that what the resources to sell of what Edu inherited certainly has played a part in this?
Yeah. Look, I think we're right to critique some, and we're right to praise others. I don't, it's okay for it to be an average performance. I just want to address one of the comments, because I think it brings up an important point from Paul Abutu. Did Manchester City want to sell Gabi Jesus and Zinchenko? Yes, and they got good value for their sales. Please don't make excuses for our poor sales performance. They didn't have to, is the point. They didn't have to sell them. We were in a position where we bought Aaron Ramsdale in. It was clear that that he was going to be our number one. He took over from Bernd Leno. We're in a position where we've shown our hand. We've gone, look, we've got a new number one. We don't want this guy anymore. I think he was coming towards the end of his contract anyway, because when did he sign? 2019. So he had maybe 2 years left. We're in a position where we've shown our hand, and we kind of have to sell. Man City didn't need to. They've got space to play them. Not who's to say they would have played. Similar with Sterling, I think. But the problem is they have a depth of squad where they would have got minutes.
Yeah.
But it's not clear from an external perspective to a Man City buyer, someone coming to Man City and saying, I've got some money for you. It's not clear whether they're going to play them or not, because they've got such a depth of squad. They rotate all the time. And this is, you want to get to that position where you have 17, 18, 19 players, a really brilliant core group of players who maybe every so often you just refresh. One summer you maybe take off 1 or 2, add in 2 or 3. And at that point is when I would judge Edu. I still think we're 14, 15 players.
Yeah. And Clive says a simple equation: you get better at sales when you get better at buying. And linking back to Paul's, I think it was Paul, his question about Gabi and Zinchenko. Both of those players were bought at a point in time where they were rated very highly at a young age. Zinchenko went on loan to PSV as well and gained further senior time. And Jesus, similar to the pathway of Alvarez, has been used and gradually improved to the level where a club like Arsenal would want him. And the same thing with Alvarez. Already, after a short space of time, a lot of the top clubs in Europe would want Julian Alvarez and would pay upwards of 45, 50 million pounds to get their hands on him as well. And so whilst I agree with your response to Paul's question about that, it's not at all about making excuses, because Jesus and Zinchenko were winning titles with Manchester City. Arsenal wanted to be in a position where they were competing with Man City. Well, what do? You go and get players that have won titles, which Zinchenko and Jesus both did. Now, the next step for Arsenal, because we've shown that we can compete with Man City with those players in the team. And this season, yes, it's been harder because I think there's a number of factors, including injuries and Liverpool's return to the fore as well, that have made it tougher. But we sit in third, which, if you look at the record of the Premier League over the last few years, you'd say we're the third best club in England, to be honest. And I think that Jesus and Zinchenko will be players that Arteta is looking at in the long term to upgrade upon. And, they came from a team that won it and a team that now have outgrown those two. And so we're going to have to, I think, go down that same pathway if we want to, keep on the coattails and beyond with City.
Yeah. And I also, I think, because we're talking about money, clubs don't just pick numbers out of thin air. They'll go to Deloitte money leagues, and you hear about all these lawyers who come in and assess assets and look at wages, all this sort of stuff. So yes, there are good sales. Yes, there are bad sales, but they're at the very edge. And I think most sales are just what the market was, at the time, what was the market situation, and what was, again, to be clear, I'm not saying there aren't good or bad sales, but there's situations where we look back and we go, well, that's a terrible sale.
Yeah.
But in the moment, that was what the player was worth. Yes, he's played his way into being a better player, or yes, he's played his way into being a worse player. But at the moment, that was the value of the player. So we're dealing with economics as well. So it's hard. I will never go too hard on the sales thing, because we also don't know. With this, it's again, the transfer market is something that I think. What's that thing about Dunning? Is it Dunning-Kruger? We all think we know loads about it, but honestly, the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, I don't I don't understand how players are valued. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and I think obviously the era that we live in with the existence of things like Football Manager and FIFA and
Yeah.
things like this often do influence how people think that the football world works, and it really doesn't work in that same way. Look, it's selling is something that I think is going to be scrutinized this summer, and I think we'll have a much better clarity about how good Edu is or how good the club is at selling after this summer has completed. So let's just wait and see what happens. Of course, with the profit and sustainability regulations, that is always an undertone and could still restrict other clubs from spending more. But we'll have to see what happens as we bring kind of the show onto the last section. I actually want to open up to you, Alex, in terms of a finishing topic. Which question mark for you stands out about Arsenal, Arteta, Edu, the ownership? What is standing out for you as the biggest question of Arsenal right now?
Well, I can only say what's on my mind.
Yeah.
So, look, I loved the performance. I love the result against Palace. I loved it. And that is, as I say, the most important thing. If we're winning matches, that's all that matters. But I do still worry about our open play structure. I have a number of specific things. But I think just specifically before I say that, yeah, as I say, if we win on set pieces and field tilts at the end of the season, I don't care. If we win a title by the ball bouncing off the goalkeeper's head 10 times again, I don't mind. It really doesn't bother me. But what does bother me is consistently putting ourselves in a position where the fine margins go for us. I think you every game you're going to be talking about fine margins. Of course, that is football. You can do 99 things right, but the one thing that goes wrong might mean you lose the game. But if you put yourself in the right position enough time, it's like getting on a surfboard. If you build a good surfboard, the waves might not come, but you've built the surfboard, and when it does come, you're gonna be all right. So you can only focus on building the surfboard. And I think part of our surfboard that isn't working at the moment is our open play. Number of things, and I'll maybe throw this to you. I think we lack a bit of central dynamism, and I mean that by carries. I think either from Zinchenko or from Timber or from putting Smith Rowe in there or something. I'd love to see someone drive through the center of the pitch a bit more. I think we've lost that squeeze that we had last season. Like in the best moments of last season, Saliba and Gabriella literally they were like beyond the halfway line. It may be to pull people out, it might be because against Palace we were trying to pull Palace a little bit apart. I don't understand that, but when we do that and we separate out our centre back on our number 9, it makes us play a little bit safer because the players aren't as compressed and can sort of knock it round teams in the way we did at points last season. Not to over-index last season. I think that's another whole issue.
Yeah.
And I also think the balance of our attack causes us issues. I think we have too many facilitators at the moment. I felt it against Liverpool. If you put players on a spectrum, at the moment, Martinelli is really the only player we have who is a killer, who is a finisher first. We were stood there against Liverpool, and all of Martinelli's spaces I felt were clogged by players whose first idea when they pick up the ball is connect, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. You need those players as well. If you had 5 killers, you'd have a problem. But at the moment, we've only got 1, and I'd love to address it either by moving some players around or just changing that slightly. Maybe put Trossard in a different position. I don't know, but yeah, I do worry about us from open play. I think I worked out the last goal we scored from open play, and I will define that as not a transition goal. So, for example, Havertz against Brighton, I would say was a transition goal. You could even argue the one I'm about to say was a transition goal because it came from Martinelli. But I would say the last open play goal we scored was Saka against Fulham. And then before that, you're going quite a way back. So I think to like the Luton game. So I don't know. I do worry about that. That's my question mark at the minute.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'm trying to think now off the top of my head. I'm going back the last the goal. The best way to find the goal that kind of played from a build up.
We broke a team down essentially.
Yeah, exactly. What was the first Brighton goal?
First Brighton goal was Jesus at the back post. I looked at it for a video. I think the last, in my opinion, and people could disagree with me, but in my opinion, since Luton, so like that for example, that Ben, I think you could say
Martinelli one came from a mistake from their goalkeeper when we got the throw in. Yeah.
Even the Fulham one I mentioned is really Martinelli breaking down the left hand side, and it's as I say, it's a mistake. So. Yeah, I don't know. We're going to be sat for the rest of the season against a lot of low blocks.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was going to say in answer to your points there, is that the reason why it's different is because people look at us differently this season, and people are
100%.
treating us differently this season, and teams have taken a lot of time in the build up to playing us to work out what wasn't working against Arsenal last season and what small wins teams had against Arsenal when they did get them last season, and they're using that as the primary strategy when they play us now. Now, I agree with you. We have far too many facilitators and not enough killers. And our killer, which I agree with you, being Martinelli, and I think he showed that in the game against Palace of when he gets into those positions, he's not looking up to pass in those moments. He's looking to score. I think there's more to be coached from Martinelli, personally. I think there's more improvements to be made to his game. I think that he's always one touch beyond what he needs to do. I think sometimes he's thinking too much in his head when he's got the ball at his feet, and he'll take an extra touch when he doesn't need to, or overhit the final touch, or it's kind of been coached into him that he needs to pass sometimes when he could be a bit more ruthless at times.
Okay.
And I think that Jesus and the role that he's played, I think this system needs a centre forward that can facilitate, but maybe not one that's facilitate first, and it's more facilitate second. And Jesus is a facilitate first centre forward. And trust me, whoever we sign next to be the next number 9 for Arsenal, I want some of those facilitating qualities in that centre forward. But everything that is missing from Jesus as a primary is what I want to see in whoever we go for next, which is why I'm so annoyed at the lack of options that there are in the market at centre forward. Right, we are crying out for a striker, and they're, for me, in terms of the options that we could go for, just simply aren't there for us. And I think we're going to have to find someone in the end that is someone that can become that in the next few seasons, rather than someone that is that for us right now. A lot of fans aren't going to like that.
No,
but
I agree with you.
I think that that's the reality of the market of where we're at. I've been saying it for some time. Where do you stand on Ivan Toney being that guy? Just out of curiosity.
I've come down on the no side for Toney. If he was £40 million, I'd do it tomorrow. I'd do it tomorrow.
Words out of my mouth, yeah.
But
I can't get over the price tag. I cannot get over it.
No, you can't. You can't do that for 80 million because he's had one season of sample. What was it? 8 penalties in 20 or 6 penalties in 20 or something like that. He's a great player, and actually, I think he can do a lot of things. I think he can be maybe the player that you were describing, and maybe I would argue he's just facilitate first, because I look at his best. Here's the question: what is the unstoppable quality that Arsenal have? For City, it's Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. You literally, it doesn't. You could put the best. You could put the next coming of Nesta next to Haaland, and he would still find a way, right?
Yeah.
With Trent and Salah, that connection down the right hand side, no defender in the world, especially not Zinchenko, is going to be able to stop that. The question I have is, what is the inevitable quality in Arsenal's team? The thing that when we're playing poorly gets us out. We have great players, but who is inevitable? And I look at Ivan Toney and I say, for 80, 90 million pounds, are you inevitable? No. I look at Osimhen and I think there's qualities, for 30 million pounds more, if we can do that deal for 20, 30 million pounds more, where you say that guy can move centre backs in a way that I can't see being stopped. I'm not saying he's going to absolutely smash it, but he has that inevitable quality.
Can he move Premier League centre backs? And I don't want to be that guy that's like always playing against Serie A farmers, because I'm not that guy. I'm actually very defensive about disparaging comments about other leagues, but I still think there is the question mark, the Premier League question mark about Osimhen, and that's a lot of money to go out and bring in a guy for 130 million pounds that's had one 30-plus goal a season thing. He's got 8 in 18, I think, for Napoli this season, who aren't having the best of campaigns, to be fair, as a club. But the big money for me, Rice, I was so happy paying that money for Rice. Like, I was more than happy to spend that amount of money on Rice. And I had a lot of pushback from people saying, why are we spending this much on someone who's not better than Partey? And I think he's proven this season why we've spent that much money on him. And I still think he can get better as well. I think there's still things he can improve. But the striker thing, if you're going to spend 100 million, because Haaland, if he didn't have a release clause, was going to be going for over 100 million. and that's what you got to look for. And again, I don't know if Osimhen's good enough to pay that.
I think maybe Haaland's the good comparison, because if Erling Haaland had come into the league and hadn't been able to City hadn't been able to generate him the spaces he's had in behind, which is his superpower, that just once he's behind, you're done, right?
You're done. Yeah.
He has been able to do that, but even if he hadn't, he has a knack to find space in the box. He's got an aerial ability. He's got other things in his game, and that's what I'd say about Osimhen. Is that Osimhen? I would say for me, Osimhen's superpower is finding a little bit of space in the box. Even if he can't do that, he has the running power in behind. I think he's the flip of Haaland. He has the running power in behind. He has the height. He has that. You saw that goal he assisted for Kvaratskhelia the other day. Like, he's got that ability to hold on to it in the box and get an action off sharply. He's strong. So even if his superpower dulls down, which to me is holding defenders and getting a sharp action away, even if he can't do that, I think he has other aspects to his game that means he will be able to, and then I think he can establish himself. But yeah, but I don't know. Look, there's always questions, and again, that's my opinion from watching. I think 4 or 5 90s probably by now over the last couple of years, and then YouTube clips and compilations or whatever. I'm not an Osimhen expert, and no, unless you are literally him, no one knows.
Yeah.
So,
Erling Haaland got 52 goals in 53 games last season. How many do you think he would have got for Arsenal?
Haaland? That is a good question. That is a good question.
Because I like what you were saying about the spaces that Man City were creating for him and stuff. And they are a superior build-up team to us, without question. So I'm curious, because we look at Haaland and say, well, he won City the treble last season, but let's not pretend they're not a team that's already threatened to be winning that, even if it was Jesus even up there, last season. I think they would have won close to a treble last season still. So, yeah, how many goals would Haaland score for Arsenal last season?
I think he would have got a number. I think it would have been less, because we don't use we don't have that elite half space crosser. We might do in Fabio Vieira, but he can't get on the pitch. So I don't think he'd have had that. I don't think. I think we try and control the game further up the pitch than City, so I don't think he'd have the space in behind to get those types of goals. I think he would have scored more from set pieces, maybe. It's hard to say. I think he would have scored, but I don't think he would have scored as many. Yeah, I think that City team is uniquely set up, because also our superpower last season was getting our wingers inside, and that compresses his spaces anyway. So,
yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's the worry I've got, is whenever we sign that striker that comes next, is I don't think they're going to deliver what Haaland's delivered. I don't think we can get our own version of Haaland. I think that if we signed Haaland, this is kind of the point of the question, we don't get the 52 goal season striker in Haaland if we sign him last season. So it's not just for me about the centre forwards, and I think that's the key point about where Arsenal is at right now with how their squad looks. I think we are 2 forwards away from that kind of group being completed. I want to see another wide player. I like Trossard, but he's a stopgap. One of the best stopgaps we've ever had.
An amazing stopgap, but yeah, I agree.
But he is a stopgap with respect to him. Mudryk, we were very, very interested. I don't like watching him at Chelsea, because I just look at that and think, what a waste! What a waste of talent that could have. I watched him so much at Shakhtar when we were being linked to him, and I just saw that was moldable, something there that could have been turned into something special. And I think he's been ruined, at Chelsea, which is why I'm worried about the Havertz situation. But we haven't really got time to cover that in enough detail. But similar to how Havertz at Leverkusen, and the talent that was there and what he was showing was just drained and sucked out of him at that club. And I worry that Mudryk's going a similar way. But I feel that we are a fully fit Pedro Neto style player. Somebody like that can offer you more pace, more speed in this team, because we aren't City. Like, people say that we've got B-Tech Pep, right, and that we've got the guy that wants to copy Pep, but he is different to Pep.
It's very different.
There are differences between Arteta and Pep. There's certainly similarities, but there are differences between them, and they have different philosophies, and they know that if they're going to beat City to a title, they can't do it by being City. They've got to do it by I mean, we beat them by being almost an anti-City, if you like, when we beat them this season. So, yeah, very interesting. But the question mark about the spaces is great.
I think the last thing I'll say is if I have a bugbear with Arteta, I do think sometimes and people say he overthinks. I don't think it's as simple as this. I think he prioritizes system over individual. And that's not as simple as a binary choice. I think he's just ever so slightly prioritizes system. And I think sometimes I go, look, mate, you've got Bukayo Saka on your team. I don't know who can ride contact inside as a midfielder better than Bukayo Saka. So let him do it. I don't know, looking at Gabby Martinelli, I don't know who in that left-hand channel can do what he does with the level of consistency we've seen it, as well as Gabby Martinelli. There's a reason that these players have got to the level that they're at, and there's and he's putting, for example, like Declan Rice is exactly where he needs to be. He has a supernatural ability to stop play, and that's exactly where he needs to be. He's put him right where he needs to be. That's why he's so brilliant. I sometimes worry with our forwards. Are they in the exact best position? Can Saka come in as our right eight? Because I like what is, for me, I just look at some of our players and I go, you have Smith Rowe combining on the edge of the box. Can anyone stop? Can anyone stop you? What did Jamie Carragher say? One of the best ball carriers in the Premier League. Has he been given the opportunity to do that? I don't know. And I sometimes just think, especially with the forward players, Arteta prioritizes sort of system a little bit too much over going, what is your superpower? Go do it.
Yeah. He's always wanting control. Like when I watch him from the press box and on the touchline, the amount of times he's going like this, like to calm things down. Like and if someone takes a shot early, if someone plays the wrong pass, like he gets so visibly irritated that we lose control in games, and that we don't do things to the letter. There is something as much as maybe overcoaching. I hope that we're not there. I'm not saying he is overcoaching at the moment, but there's definitely a potential for him to become somebody that ends up overcoaching. I don't think we're there yet. But it's a really interesting thing about Saka, because I've complained for a long, long time that he's being suffocated. He's too wide. I don't know if I would move him to the right 8, but I would certainly change the way he plays his right wing role to be more interior than he is. I love that what he has done is added a different dimension where Martinelli hasn't. Saka can go on his right foot where Martinelli can't to the same level go on to his left. But you should celebrate what's good about them. And Martinelli's celebration is what he does do with his right foot. So tailor the system to getting that to its max. Tailor the system on the right-hand side to getting Saka into the most dangerous positions to score possible, and stop pushing him so far out. And just lastly, I know we're pushing time. Do you think Ben White is I like Ben White a lot, and it's really hard to ask this question because I like Ben White a lot. He's not so great to speak to, but I like him as a footballer a lot. But I think that when it comes to that partnership, do you think Saka do you think that's the right type of fullback for Saka as a right winger?
I think it was last season, but it relies on Ben White making those overlapping runs, and I don't know why. And I think he's not doing it as much this season. He was at one point. He was actually one of the highest overlappers, but he's come off it. So I think when Ben White, and I've said this before, if Ben White is playing at his absolute peak, the job that he does, the job that he does, I don't. If you wrote that down as a list, like be the third centre back in the 3, create those overlaps, be an option in the wide triangles, be an option to stop defending inside, be able to roll around when Gabriel steps forward and going centrally. There's no right back in the world who can do that. But when he's not off his game, but when he's clearly something is up in terms of supporting Saka, then you start to look at, it's not him, but a profile like a Brook Norton-Cuffy, that just complete up and down, up and down, up and down. You start to go, I wonder. But for me, I do think Saka's role needs to change anyway. So it might be a good thing long term.
Yeah, for sure. I think I like Ben White a lot, as I've said, and it's not a criticism of him. I think he is a centre half playing right back, but a very mobile centre half, which I think I'm really curious what eventually Jurriën Timber does in this team and what he turns out to be for us, whether it's on the right or the left.
He's currently the best player in the world, is what he is.
Yes, we hope. We hope that certainly turns out to be the case, because it is exciting to see what happens with him if he does indeed recover from this injury as good as he was before it, which is always going to be a big question. Alex, it's been a genuine pleasure to link up with you today for a show and have a chat. And thank you so much for doing so.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure. And yeah, love to do it again.
Please do shout out your channel and where people can find you and what you're going to be up to.
The Different Knock. I've got a video coming out, depending on when my editor sends it to me. Tonight, all about Smith Rowe. I've got some more content coming out the next couple. I'm probably going to do a video on our youth discussion and sort of try and put it all into one thing, because I think it's an interesting discussion.
Lovely stuff. You can follow Alex on Twitter at diffknock. So please make sure you go and check him out over there. You've got a personal account, right, as well?
Yes, at AM on Football, if you want to follow me on there.
Is it Amon? Amon Football.
Yeah, AM on Football, but I'm also my surname is Moneypenny, so it works either way.
Right, there you go. Lovely stuff. But thank you again, Alex, for joining me. It's been a real pleasure. Let me know in the chat box and, of course, in the comment section, people, if you've enjoyed it and if you've got any thoughts on the things that we've discussed. Maybe you've disagreed with some of the things that we've talked about. I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's always good to get that varied, different kind of response. So don't shy away. Do leave your comments. And but thank you so much, guys, for everyone for listening. And I will see you again very soon tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8 a.m. Have a fantastic day and see you soon.